Ethan never believed in fate. He believed in choices, in moments shaped by courage or fear. That belief began to change on a quiet autumn evening when he stepped into a small cafe to escape the rain. The place smelled of coffee and warm bread. Soft music played in the background. At the corner table sat a girl with chestnut hair, reading a book and absent-mindedly stirring her tea. When she looked up, their eyes met for a second too long to be accidental. Her name was Lena. She smiled politely, then returned to her book. Ethan ordered his coffee, but his attention kept drifting back to her. Something about her calm presence felt familiar, like a memory he couldn't place. A few minutes later, the power went out. The cafe fell into soft darkness, lit only by the streetlights outside. Someone laughed nervously. Lena looked up again, this time directly at him. "Looks like we're stuck here for a while," she said. Ethan smiled. Maybe that's not such a bad thing. That simple sentence became the beginning of a story neither of them expected. A story of timing, choices, and love that would grow slowly, painfully, beautifully. The lights returned a few minutes later, but neither of them rushed back to their world. Lena closed her book slowly. "So," she said, tilting her head slightly, "do you always stare at strangers during blackouts?" Ethan laughed, surprised by her honesty. "Only the ones who look like they're hiding 1,000 stories." She raised an eyebrow. "And what makes you think I am?" "Because you're reading a book but watching the room," he replied. "That means you're somewhere else." For the first time, she looked truly interested. They talked. Not about big things, not yet. About music, rainy cities, favorite seasons. Ethan learned she loved late-night walks and hated small talk. Lena learned he collected moments more than things and wrote thoughts he never shared. Time moved differently around them. When the rain finally stopped, she stood up and reached for her coat. "I should go," she said. Then, after a pause, "I'm glad the lights went out." He nodded. "Me too." She hesitated at the door, then turned back. "Same time tomorrow?" Ethan smiled, knowing something fragile and powerful had just begun. The next evening, the cafe felt different to Ethan. Warmer, louder, alive with expectation. He arrived early, pretending to read the menu while watching the door. When Lena walked in, time softened around her. She wore a light coat and a quiet smile. The kind that didn't ask for attention but always received it. Her eyes searched the room, and when they found him, something gentle passed between them. Recognition, relief. "You're early," she said. "So are you," he replied. They ordered the same drinks without planning it. That made them laugh. A small coincidence, but it felt important. Their conversation drifted deeper this time. She told him about her childhood by the sea, about how silence used to scare her until she learned to listen to it. He told her about the dreams he abandoned because they felt too fragile to protect. There was a moment, quiet, heavy, when their hands almost touched on the table. Lena pulled back slightly. "I'm not very good at beginnings," she admitted. "I usually leave before things get complicated." Ethan looked at her, steady and honest. "I'm not asking for forever," he said. "Just this moment." She held his gaze longer than before. "Then let's not rush it," she whispered. Outside, the city moved on, unaware that something delicate was unfolding, something that could either grow into love or break under its own hope. Days passed, and their meetings became a quiet ritual. The same cafe, different conversations, deeper pauses. They never named what was happening, but it lived in the way their eyes searched for each other, before words did. One evening, rain traced slow lines down the windows. The cafe was almost empty. Lena sat across from Ethan, her fingers wrapped around a warm cup. "Do you ever feel like some connections arrive too early?" she asked softly. "Or too late," he replied. She nodded. "I'm afraid of wanting something I can't keep." Ethan leaned forward slightly. "And I'm afraid of not wanting anything at all." Silence followed, not uncomfortable, just heavy with meaning. Then she did something unexpected. She reached across the table and touched his hand, just for a second. Long enough for his breath to catch. "I don't know where this goes," she said, "but I know I don't want to walk away yet." Neither did he. Outside, the rain slowed. Inside, something fragile took root. Hope mixed with fear, desire balanced on trust. And for the first time, they both understood. This wasn't just a moment anymore. It was a choice. The next days felt lighter, as if something unspoken had finally been allowed to breathe. They started meeting outside the cafe. Walks without direction. Conversations without endings. Sometimes silence followed them, but it no longer felt empty. It felt shared. One evening, they sat on a low stone wall near the river. The city lights reflected on the water like broken stars. Lena traced the edge of the stone with her fingers. "I don't let people get close," she said quietly. "Not because I don't want to, but because once they do, they expect me to stay the same." Ethan turned toward her. "What if I don't want you to stay the same?" She looked at him then. Really looked, as if weighing whether truth was safer than distance. "I've lost someone before," she admitted. "And since then, I leave before I can be left." The air grew heavy, but he didn't pull away. "I can't promise I won't hurt you," he said honestly, "but I can promise I won't disappear." Her eyes softened. She leaned her head against his shoulder, hesitant at first, then still. In that quiet closeness, something shifted. Not a grand confession, not love yet, but trust. And sometimes, trust is the bravest beginning of all. Autumn deepened, and with it came a quiet certainty neither of them named. They spent evenings walking without direction, sharing pieces of themselves that had never found a safe place before. Ethan laughed more. Lena stayed longer. The walls between them thinned, brick by careful brick. One night, the air was cold and clear. They stood beneath a street lamp, its soft glow wrapping them in gold. "I've been thinking," Lena said, her voice barely above a whisper. "About us?" Ethan's chest tightened. "And I'm scared," she admitted, "but not of you. Of how much this matters." He stepped closer, slow, giving her time to step back if she wanted. She didn't. "I don't want to be another chapter you close," he said quietly. "I want to be someone you choose." Her breath caught. For a moment, everything felt suspended. The city, the noise, time itself. Then she reached for his hand and held it firmly. "I'm choosing you," she said. He didn't answer with words. He leaned in, careful, giving her the space to pull away. She didn't. Their foreheads touched first, a shared breath, and then a soft, unhurried kiss. Not rushed, not desperate, just real. When they pulled back, both were smiling. Nothing dramatic changed that night. And yet, everything did. After that night, everything felt brighter and heavier. They didn't rush into labels. They didn't need to. What they shared lived in the small things, fingers brushing when they walked, quiet smiles across crowded rooms, messages sent just to say I'm thinking of you. But with closeness came vulnerability. One evening, Lena grew unusually quiet. They sat on a bench overlooking the river, the water dark and restless. "I'm afraid this won't last," she said softly. "Not because of you, but because good things never stay the same." Ethan looked at her, steady. "Nothing stays the same," he said. "But that doesn't mean it ends. Sometimes it just grows into something different." She looked at him, searching for certainty he couldn't promise, only presence. "I don't want to lose myself in this," she whispered. "You won't," he said. "I want to walk beside you, not ahead of you." She exhaled slowly, leaning her head against his shoulder again. Not in fear this time, in trust. Yet somewhere beneath the calm, something unspoken waited. A truth neither of them was ready to face. The message came on an ordinary morning. Lena stared at her phone longer than she should have. The name on the screen pulled her back into a life she thought she had already closed. Ethan noticed immediately. "You're quiet?" he said gently. She forced a smile. "Just old things coming back." They walked in silence for a while. The air between them felt heavier than before, weighted with words unsaid. That evening, she asked him to meet her by the river again, the place where everything seemed honest. "There's something I should have told you earlier," she said, her voice unsteady. "I didn't lie to you. I just didn't tell the whole truth." He waited. "I might have to leave," she continued, "not forever, but long enough to change things." His chest tightened. "Leave where? Another city?" "A job I once turned down." They called again. The silence that followed wasn't peaceful this time. "You're going to go," he said, not accusing, understanding. "I don't know," she whispered. "And that's what scares me." He took a slow breath. "I don't want to be the reason you stay or the reason you go. I just want to know where I stand." Her eyes filled, but she didn't cry. "You stand here," she said, touching his chest. "Right here, and that's why this hurts." They stood close, not touching, both realizing that love wasn't always about holding on. Sometimes it was about choosing honesty over comfort. The days that followed felt suspended in uncertainty. Lena didn't leave. Not yet. But something had shifted. Her smile came slower. Her thoughts wandered farther. Ethan felt it in the pauses, in the way she sometimes looked past him, already halfway somewhere else. One evening, they met at the cafe, where everything had begun. "I got the official offer today," she said quietly. He nodded, bracing himself. "And? I have 1 week to decide?" The words settled between them like a final note in a song. Ethan reached for her hand. "I won't ask you to stay." Her eyes filled instantly. "That's not fair," she whispered. "I want you to fight for me." "I am," he said gently, "by letting you choose without guilt." She shook her head, tears escaping now. "Why does loving you feel like losing you?" He brushed her thumb with his own. "Because love doesn't always mean staying close. Sometimes it means wanting the other person to become who they're meant to be, even if that means walking apart." They held each other then, not as two people afraid to lose, but as two people brave enough to let go if needed. Outside, the city lights flickered on, unaware that two hearts were standing at the edge of a life-changing decision. The morning came quietly. No dramatic goodbyes, no rushing. Just 2 cups of coffee growing cold on the table, and a silence filled with everything they hadn't said yet. Lena stood by the window, her suitcase near the door. "I leave in 2 hours," she said softly. Ethan nodded. His chest felt heavy, but his voice stayed calm. "I know." She turned to him then. Really turned, as if memorizing every detail. "I don't regret this," she said. "Not a single moment." "Neither do I," he replied. "You changed me." She smiled through tears. "You reminded me how it feels to be seen." They stood close, foreheads touching one last time. No rush, no fear, just gratitude. "Maybe one day," she whispered. "Maybe," he answered. And for the first time, it didn't feel like a lie. At the door, she paused, then reached into her pocket and placed something in his hand. The bookmark she'd always used, the one he had noticed on their first night. "So, you don't forget," she said. He closed his fingers around it. "As if I ever could." The door closed softly behind her. Weeks later, life moved on. Not the same, but deeper. Ethan still visited the cafe sometimes. Sometimes he smiled. Sometimes it hurt. But always, he remembered, love didn't end. Just because 2 people walked in different directions. Some love stories don't fade, they become part of who we